when you feel like life happens to you. I had to decide really early on if I wanted to be the victim or I could lean into that and figure out how do I change for the better through this. Because there was so much about that season that just sucked.
My guest today is somebody who I did not know at all until very recently. And if you've ever had this happen, you'll understand. She went from I don't know her at all to like super good friend and like really fast. And the funny thing is the way that we met is my coach, Bill Hart, said, "Do you know Katie Shive?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you need to." And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds great." And people say stuff like that sometimes. But when Bill Hart says it, you just make the introduction and you do. So we got introduced, we started talking, and pretty quickly into our first conversation, I went, "I need you on the podcast. Like, this has to happen." So with no more intro here, Katie Shive, thanks for flying all the way out here for this.
Yeah, this was fun. I've actually never flown, not quite halfway across the country, but yeah, I live in Montana, so it was really fun to just fly in literally for the day.
But you were actually,
well, yeah, and I wanted to meet you in real life. There's just something that you can't get when you're behind a screen.
Yeah, and it's funny because you initially were like, "Yeah, I can totally do the podcast," but you were thinking we'd just be on Zoom or whatever.
I mean, my whole world pretty much is on Zoom outside of like the conference circuit. And so I was like, yeah, send me the Zoom link. And when I was talking to Allison and your team, she was like, "Oh, you're not coming into the studio?" I'm like, I didn't know that was an option. So
it just makes for such a better conversation. So I thank you for making the trip.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now because it's fascinating. So where Bill's introduction was, it was to get me to understand what you're doing with AI. Since then, we're now part of this AI Fight Club, which we don't talk about.
We don't talk about Fight Club.
Yeah. But what are you doing right now? Like, what's your main function?
So I'm just obsessed with figuring out AI. And I think that can be kind of cliche because everybody's drank the AI Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
But really my background is in personal branding. So I really take a lot of time to not just my own personal brand, but helping executives, mortgage professionals understand, the fastest way to build trust is through your personal brand. And we are in a very trust-poor industry. And so if you don't have a personal brand, it makes it really hard to build trust and to grow your business. And now when you bring in AI, it's so much harder, I feel, because you can have an AI selfie. Is that video real? Is that image real? Is your voice real? Like everything can be manipulated. And so I feel like there's such a way that you need to lean into AI and embrace the efficiencies. But how do you still build your personal brand that keeps the integrity of who you are and your voice and your message? So I've spent the last year or two learning, from everything on a technical level of all the different platforms and how do they work, and to finding really creative ways of how do you prospect? How can you use a creative AI solution to break through that standard noise of, oh, it's another blog post. Maybe it's doing an AI song or, there's lots of cool ways that you can use it.
Okay, so people can see you speak all over the place. You're on podcasts, all of the AI stuff you've got out there. I want to dive way deeper into who you are, how you came to this point, because this is a big change for you, as it is for everybody, right? AI happened to the world, and some people's reaction is, I want to know everything about this and figure it out. And those people are normally really good at change. Like they love change management. They love, they're not afraid of something new. And then you've got people that are totally afraid of something new. And I want to talk about the type of person you are led to this, right? So let's go back. You grew up, born in Portland, left Portland at 12, and you lived in Reno for how long?
The first stint, 12 to when I graduated high school, 18, and then moved to the Forbidden California to do some schooling. It's where I met my husband. We got married and then moved back to Reno so that I could finish my undergrad and eventually my master's degree. So kind of boomeranged a little bit.
Yeah. And you weren't in mortgage back then. I mean, so you were...
I was all over. No, I went the unconventional route. I didn't know, right out of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the ripe age of almost 18. So I spent 3 years. I went to a Christian ministry school, did some missions, traveled around the world, then decided okay, maybe I can dabble in college. So I went into a community college, And I moved up to Mammoth Lakes, California, because I love to ski. And that's where I met my husband. And so my first formal marketing role was for the marketing department at Mammoth, learning how to market, adventure sports and, an international skiing resort, really.
Wow. So you're not locked into any one thing. You're not one of those people who's like, oh, I was born to be this. You just kind of experience different things and you were okay bouncing around.
I think I had to. I love that you talk about change. And I think this is such a powerful topic because by nature, I hate change.
What?
I am probably the most terrified of change. And I'll lead into a little bit with my story of even how I got to Montana. But I am the most change averse person naturally. And I have had to, by force, learn how to be more flexible and embrace change because
I love that.
I hate
I actually
change.
thought I was bringing on a change expert because you change.
No, I
have
cringe.
a history of change.
I just have a really strong, I don't know if it's my internal compass of whatever I do, my conviction is I want to do it really well. And so I've had some pretty pivotal life instances that have forced me to evolve. And through that, you learn to embrace change a little bit more, but naturally I am the most risk averse.
So you're not out there trying to find change.
No.
You're
no. I'm
react
always
to change.
homeostasis. I am where's comfort? Wow. I want to stay put. You'll appreciate this. At 20, I got married when I was 22. So pretty young. And shortly into our marriage, my husband was we need to buy a home. We're double income, no kids. He had sold his condo previously, and I was no, a mortgage is locked in. It's too risky. And this was back in 2012 when, we bought a 5-bedroom, completely renovated on a cul-de-sac in one of the best parts of town for $170,000.
Oh my God.
We had an FHA at 3.5%. We came to the closing table with $7,000. And that was terrifying to me. And our mortgage was less than, $1,200 with PITI. And it felt terrifying, that change. Mm-hmm. And you look back in hindsight and you're oh my gosh, that's some people's car payment.
Right.
It just felt really, really scary. And obviously small changes have led to bigger, changes. But my husband is a change seeker.
Oh, really?
So he's naturally pulled me. But if you look in our marriage, he probably would tell you he feels in some ways probably that I've slowed some of our change down because he wanted to buy and sell, house hack. So he wanted to buy a house every 12 months and move and jump, and I kind of pull him back in.
Which is the best part of marriage, by the way, is when two people are coming at it from totally different angles, and then you find
until you're at an impasse and you're
yeah,
who gives? Yeah.
So 2012, you bought in Reno?
Yep. So we bought in Reno. We moved back to Reno so that I could finish. So I did my undergrad in marketing. And then 6 months later, I had the crazy idea to jump into my master's program. So I did a 2-year stint back at the university to finish my master's degree in business. And that's what led me into mortgage. So it's 2017. I was working at the time at a fintech company, which it's kind of all the craze of it's the stereotypical, we had the hammocks and all the fun things that come with a fintech. Yeah. And it closed their doors. I made the 3rd round of layoffs. The irony is I walked out on my last day of work. The only thing, you just have a small bag. And I had a reusable grocery bag, and it was a Guild bag. And it was the bag that I got from when we bought our house. It was the closing bag gift.
No way.
And I have a photo with packing up my desk, and it was a Guild bag. And little did I know, less than 6 months later, my job and entry into my full-blown career started at Guild.
That's crazy. But when you were told hey, this is you, first of all, waiting through 2 rounds of layoffs before it got to you, were you just every day, or were you plug away and they'll let me know?
No, the writing was on the wall, but it just kept and it happened within a pretty short period of time, but it was okay, the marketing department's now gone. So now you're managing a customer service team. Oh, and you're going to do marketing and communications, and we're rebranding. And it was, drinking from a fire hydrant because I was going to school, finishing my MBA. So I was working probably 50, 60 hours a week, managing a call center, training people, going to grad school at night. So I would work from 8 a.m. till 5 or 6 p.m., start my grad classes 7 to 10 p.m. And I decided in the middle of that it'd be good to do a marathon. So I was marathon training, running, 30, 50 miles a week. And then we got a puppy in that. So, I mean,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
kind of, we do a lot of change. But
Yeah. So you're trained, which by the way, training for a marathon is the best way to deal with some of these things.
Yes, it is.
And I started running in '08 and I didn't know how smart that was, but in our industry, everything just shuttered in '08. And so some of the hardest things I've had to do in business were while I was running. And
I
so I would
bet
just run and just think and
some of your best
process
ideas
and,
came from those long runs.
and I
right?
never listened to music. That was my thing. No music, nothing in my ears. Just that's where I would come up with the next plan or what how I was going to get through this tough time. And it's so many endorphins, right? You're just
Yeah.
getting all of that.
Running has always been such a healthy, but not just physically, but mentally for me, it's kept me really strong.
Mm-hmm.
So all through grad school and all the stress that came with the change and working, I ran with the same group of girls for 8 years, and we always met at 5 a.m. And our rule was we would cancel the run if it was if it was below 0. That was kind of our tolerance.
That's fair.
It's fair. And so anyways, it was just, that was the best outlet for me to like run and process and manage the stress of a full-time job and grad school and all the change that came
So
with
did
it.
you I'm thinking about people that have change that they're anticipating. And I know some people that are anticipating some big change because there's things you can't control in business, but you kind of see it coming. So for that, would your tip be dive into things that keep you busy or keep you or are healthy for you? Or is that how you got through that anticipation?
That's a great question. I think to a degree, yes. I knew some of my go-to outlets, like running was always a go-to outlet. So especially if I was feeling extra stressed or like anxious or any of the internal kind of emotions that were coming up, I knew the best way that I ideate is in motion. So it's like if I'm moving, stuff feels like it's flowing. I usually feel better. So that whole period where I was unemployed, that was a real big block for me because it's like here I am finishing my master's degree, investing, thousands of dollars in my education. And now I am like having to go all these at bats with applying for different jobs and, trying to prove myself. So yeah, running was always a good outlet for me. But I think sometimes you just have to realize like there's so much that you can't control. And we by nature try to control things. So if you can just kind of learn to say, hey, there's a lot that I can't control. What is within my capability to fix or to own? I'm a big believer in what can you own? What's your ownership? Like I can't own you. I can't own the market. There's a lot that I can't control or own, but I can own this. So what is my internal dialogue? What's my mindset? And who do I surround myself with? Because I think that's a big factor too of who you hang out with and what they're feeding into you, whether that's belief or tools as well.
Gosh, that's so good. It's something that took me a lot of therapy to get to, like letting go of control. I didn't know I was a control freak until the world controlled me for a bit during the pandemic, as it did for everybody. And then I'm like, oh, I like to control things. I just didn't know.
We call it a bunch of other things. We call
totally.
we call it management. We call it leadership. We call it all of these things. And it's like, oh no, I have this high need, because you really start when you don't have control. It's scary. Yeah. It's really scary to feel like, sometimes you could probably unpack layers and it's a trust issue or it's an abandon. Like there's a lot of things that, you can unpack there. But at the end of the day, there's more that you can't control than you can.
My therapist one day this was the therapist during the pandemic, I needed help. And so he had me write on a whiteboard, the left-hand side, everything I'm worried about right now, all the stresses, all the concerns. And I wrote this huge list and he goes, cool, now take everything on that list and put it on the right side of the whiteboard if you can do something about it. And so I would erase on this side, put it on that side. And then he goes, cool, on the right-hand side, on the right-hand side, write to do at the top of it. Because now I've just created a to-do list. On the left-hand side, he said, write radical acceptance. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote it down and he's like, I go, okay, what do we do about the stuff on the left? He goes, we don't. We just accept it. And I said, I can't accept these things. And he said, that's why it's called radical acceptance. And I was like, oh, like Huge moment.
What a beautiful thing though, because that is like a revelation moment of, yeah, there are just things that you have to radically accept. But I think it also leads to freedom. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty empowering to be like, whoa, like because through this state of control and adversity to change, we just continue to put the rocks in our backpack or just that weight on our shoulders of like, I am carrying this all until the wheels fall off the bus and you're like, oh, this is actually really a bad place for me and my family and other people around you.
Well, and the to-do list was easy once I separated it.
Right.
But as long as the stuff that you can control is sitting in the bucket of things
Yeah.
you can't, it's hard to pull those things out and be
Yeah.
like, wait, I can do this, I can do that.
When it gives you a false reality of like, oh, all of this is my responsibility and
Right.
I have to control all this. And when you can kind of parse that out, it's like, oh, this is manageable. I can deal with this. Like this, at least it kind of reduces that cognitive load a little bit.
How did you stop yourself from after 6 months going, maybe I never get a job?
Yeah.
Like, was that a feeling?
No, I'm so grateful for my husband who obviously going back to our mortgage payment was so peanuts and we have never lived our life in a way that we've outspent our means. So I'm really grateful. He just said, hey, I want you to be really selective over your next job. And I would rather you wait longer than jump into something that's going to like continue to elevate the stress that you've been carrying. So for that, I'm really grateful that I had the privilege and the opportunity to be selective. But this is one of my favorite stories to tell, and it's how I got to Guild. And I think it's pretty serendipitous in that my husband had, early on I'd kind of like made him do all of the decisions about our finances. So he did our loan, what have you. And so it was with Guild, but I had no clue any of the details. Every year I would get Shayla Gifford's letter of the heart. And if you've ever done the core coaching, that was kind of the standard. So every year it'd be this bright yellow paper and, Gemma was this age and the next year I was older. So I was at a TED event because I volunteered I was on the board with TEDx.
Like, okay.
TEDx, yeah. So I was on their board for many years. And so I was sitting at this like breakout session and literally sharing a seat with me. I look over and I was like, oh, Shayla Gifford.
No way.
I'd never met her in my
No
life.
way.
I was like, are you Shayla Gifford, like the loan officer? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, you did our loan. Now, if you've ever met Shayla, she has this insane memory. Like I've actually never met anybody that has her memory. So I was like, oh yeah, we did a loan with you in 2012 and we moved from Mammoth. And she goes, oh, your husband's name is Kublai and he used to work for a ski resort. And you guys, and I'm like, she had no database. She had no cell phone. She like literally, she has photographic memory. And so I was like, yeah, that would be us. And so it was so cool because we connected in real life. And I was like, well, our house just went under escrow this weekend and we're actually going to be buying. Would you like to do our loan? So it turned into another opportunity. But then I started following her on social media. And I was like, she's really cool. She's a mom. She's, this business owner. So I hounded her for 6 months to meet me for coffee because she was doing our loan. So she gave me her phone number. And after 6 months, she met me for coffee. She's like, I don't normally do this, but like, you're so persistent. So like, here's 30 minutes. And I said, I just want to know your story. I really respect you as a businesswoman and I just want to know your story. So we connected, hit it off. It took me weeks to have the courage to ask her if she would hire me because I wanted to respect the integrity of like the purity of my intention to meet her for coffee was truly to know her, not to get a job from her. So long story short, her team hired me and she put me, I worked with 2 top loan officers for 3 years. So they said, you know nothing about mortgage. You just have your master's degree. I started in a business development coordinator, which if you look professionally, that's like 10 steps backwards title-wise. But I knew it was an incredible company and I believed in the leadership. So that was a huge change for me too, to have gone from, managing a team and having some of that into this role of you do not know the industry. You're kind of the lowest on the totem pole and you have to prove yourself.
So you get in there, start rocking.
I started in 2017.
Okay.
And then, 2017, Then, some of my personal life just kind of starts coming to the surface. My husband and I struggled with infertility. So we started the journey of IVF in 2019, which thankfully allowed us to have both of my kids. But if you've ever gone through IVF or know somebody who has, it's a tremendous journey of change. That was really hard to watch most of my closest friends all be on several kids, second or third child, and to hope that someday that you would have your own family and not know was really hard. So that was 2019 going through that. Then 2020 hits. Obviously, we were still in the office until everybody went to go work from home. But my whole life changed in 2020. I know we all have a 2020 story.
Right.
But my brother passed away on Easter morning of 2020. He died of an overdose. That was in COVID. So, my mom was the only one that was able to be there. And then 89 days later, my dad died. So that was rough.
This is Easter 2020. So we just go into lockdown.
The world had just shut down.
You're in Reno.
I had a 7-month-old child who had a lot of medical needs. She was, I think at the time we had 11 specialists, a couple hospital stays. She was getting treatment twice a week. And my brother died. And then 89 days later, my dad died. Yeah. The wild thing is the doctors actually were going to have me Zoom my dad to say goodbye.
Oh, really? And he was local?
He was in Yakima, and I was in Reno.
Okay.
And his health had just deteriorated so quickly. The wild part is I remember I was out to coffee with my husband on a Saturday morning, and my dad called, and he said, "Hey, just want to let you know I was having some difficulty breathing. So I went to the hospital just to get checked out, but I'm fine." Now, obviously, because my brother had just passed, I was really my dad's only surviving. I mean, he had some siblings, but I was it for him. And I remember getting off the phone, and I looked at my husband, and I was like, if something happens to my dad, I don't think I can handle another loss. And you're kind of poly optimistic, so I was like, oh, he's fine. And Sunday happened, Monday happened, and come Wednesday, I'm having a conversation with my uncle to make sure that my dad's wishes are documented, because I just knew that we were actually looking at something that was bad. They never gave a formal diagnosis. They thought it was COVID, but he passed from respiratory failure. Wow. So I got on the last flight. I wasn't going to go because I didn't think I had the courage to go by myself. And thankfully, my husband was like, "I'll respect whatever you do, but you only get one shot to say goodbye." So we caught the last flight out, drove to Yakima, and I sat in his hospital room by myself. And then he passed we turned the machine off the next morning.
I mean, you're moving along just fine, 2017, 18, 19, crushing it, running some events, doing marketing, and then all of a sudden the world
Loved my career.
Yeah.
And then obviously when we talk about change and your uncontrollables, I mean, all of my externalities, I mean, all of that, there's nothing that I could change. Obviously, with my brother, losing my brother, I've always said it was the call we hoped we would never get. And, it was the call that we got.
If you talk about, we talked about control, and there's things you can't control. And I know that there's a lot of people have family members that deal with addiction, and you want so badly to control that for them. Was there a moment where you were just like, I can't, like, this isn't on me to control?
That was hard, especially when you're watching somebody that you love really deal with addiction, because it wasn't it was really a lifelong battle that my brother battled since he was probably in middle school. And we, personality-wise, went two completely different ways. The older he got, the more and more he spiraled, and he needed other outlets to try to mask other things. And it was like this patchwork of pain, where I looked at my journey and was like, how can I break cycles, and how can I create a different legacy for my children? And so, you can't work on somebody's problem more than they're willing to work on their own. And it was really different watching my parents navigate helping my brother because, obviously a parent's love for your child is different than sibling. But at times it was really polarizing because I'd have to tell my brother, I love you, but I will not bail you out. Like, I am not going to step in and this isn't going to help you. It's actually going to hurt you. But that caused a lot of division at times in my family because it didn't feel like love. It didn't seem, like the gracious thing to do. But, at the end of the day, he made some really tough choices. So it's just a wild time when nothing in the world, like I had no control. I couldn't control my daughter's medical, issues, and thankfully she's okay today, but I couldn't control that. I couldn't control the loss. Like the only thing I could control was internal. So I ran a lot. I was in the best shape of my life. I mean, and because we were locked down, I was running probably 6 miles a day and then in the evening doing some workout just to be outside, and I had to control the anxiety. But yeah, I think it's a wild thing to try to navigate when you feel like life happens to you, because none of those were in my control. I had to decide really early on if I wanted to be the victim or if I wanted to find a way to get freedom to be victorious. Like I could play the victim card, or I could, lean into that and figure out, how do I change for the better through this? And how do I, I don't know who exactly coined it. I think it's, I hear Dave Savage say it all the time, but how do I be better and not bitter? Because there was so much about that season that just sucked.
Was that a daily decision? That's not like you sat down and you're like, I guess
No,
I'll be
I'm
better.
better.
And then it was like totally
It's not
fine.
it's not a mindfulness thing.
Right.
Like that was not a like, oh, I'm going to mindfulness my way out of it. And the wild part is, all throughout that period of work, it was 21, 22. In mortgage, that was the pinnacle of most
things
of
are
our
booming.
career.
Yeah.
We had never been busier.
Right.
At the time, Shayla was in Spain, so she was managing our massive team from a distance. So I was, jumping in, with some of our leadership team in different ways. And then in 2021, my husband was like, we should move because we haven't had enough change.
This is the guy who likes change. And
to be fair, he's always dreamed of living in Montana. He had started like looking at property in 2015. I, hating change, was like, no. And then in 2021, he was like, no, we really need to leave. And, obviously the lockdowns made some of those decisions easier. Nevada felt like California, and that's long-term where we didn't want to raise our children. But for me, I was in such a fragile state internally that, I remember days I would drive home from work and I would pull into the driveway almost terrified that I have no recollection driving home. There was so much intensity from the weight and the pain that I would drive home on autopilot. Like I literally got in my driveway and was like, I just drove 15 minutes across town and I really don't even have memory. And of course I wasn't like blacking out,
right.
But it was just you're pure surviving.
Yeah.
So for my husband to say, we need to move, and he obviously watches the market very closely too. So he goes, we have a very small window, and if we don't leave, we are going to absolutely be priced out of this market, and we are going to miss our dream of living in Montana if we don't leave. And, for me to say, okay, I have to now go find 11 new pediatric specialists.
Oh, that's right.
For my daughter, who one is a surgeon, highly specialized, which we already had to fly out of state for because my daughter had to have reconstructive surgery, and therapists and all of these things. And to then go work remote, which meant that now I was having to fly from Montana back to Nevada at least once a month. Buying a house. Can we just talk about trying to buy a house remote in the craziest market? Took us 4 months full time. 9 offers, 2 escrows. Our house fell out of escrow less than like 5 days before we were closing. I sold all my furniture in my previous house because we negotiated furniture in our move. And then that house fell through.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, we got to close. So now we have 6 weeks to find a home, or we're going to be living in an RV that we don't own. So this was all navigating my personal change and then moving across the country. And if that's not enough of a glutton for punishment, we decided we wanted to have another baby because we are older, because it took us 9 years to even get pregnant with my daughter. So I was engineering my fertility treatments around our move date. So for me, the one change that I felt like I could control was, and I'm really good at performing under pressure, was work. And so, the market had shifted. I obviously had my son. I came back from maternity leave in September of 22. The market started to shift in around June, July of 22, right? When rates started to. So I came back and the rates started to tank. And all of a sudden we were having to reinvent ourselves to make sure that we could survive this next market cycle. And so that was just, insanity with that too. I was postpartum. I was sleep deprived. My son was born 7 days after my son was born. He got meningitis. So it was this next cycle of like, you can't make this stuff up. I finally just stopped telling people because I was like, you can go verify all of the medical records. None of this is fabricated. But at this point, like, you can't make this stuff up. Like meningitis, it was terrifying. We'd gone through the exact same medical workup with my daughter. She had the same protocol at day 3. So when my son got sick, I was like, they're going to do the spinal tap. They're going to do, like, sure enough. So we went through that whole round with my son while working, and I crashed the next year. And that's the thing. Like, you control what you control until you can't control anymore. And you hit this point, everybody's got grit and resilience. Some people maybe have the endurance to last a little bit longer. But for me, the kind of point was Shayla was doing a ton of stuff to start recruiting and just being really transformational with her team to try to keep our team going forward. And so that looked like we were doing webinars and events like insanity. And she was hosting a really huge keynote speaker, and we had an online webinar. And we had, 400 or 500 people register for the webinar. The webinar starts, and it's her, me, and the keynote speaker in one Zoom room, and nobody else. And our phones are blowing up. We're all waiting for you to let us in. Where are you? I don't even know where the other Zoom room is. There's hundreds of people in a Zoom room, and I don't even know where the link is. I don't know what account it's under. Thankfully, we figure it out. And I called Shayla at the end of the day in tears with my resignation letter. And I said, I would expect that from an intern or somebody that's just starting. I would not expect that from a senior level person that's like, that was a huge, that was an error, an honest error that was completely forgivable, and nobody on the front end knew. But that was the wake-up call for me that was like, hey, the check engine light's on, the fumes are going, your gas tank is like beyond empty, and you are doing nobody good by trying to continue to prove yourself that you can do this. Like, it's okay to say, I need a timeout.
So you fired yourself on the... Wow.
She took a month. She said, no. Like, and that just shows you who Shayla is. I mean, she's just like indefinite second chances. And she was like, please take the weekend, and I'm talking to her in tears. And,
but you knew.
I knew.
You were like, I
this
knew
is the
that
end point. I had, not just professionally, and I think because I have such a high value for integrity, part of the conversation was, hey, your vision is here, and it's already an impossible vision. And I know, looking at Everest, I don't have the stamina, and I actually didn't even have the creative passion to do that. I was like, you deserve somebody that is all in, metal, foot on the pedal, committed to run as hard and fast as you. And I actually don't have that endurance. And second to that, my whole life I have worked tirelessly to prove myself. like at what expense? Like the person that is, casualty to that is usually yourself. Like everybody around me was like, you're remarkable. Why are you trying so hard? The person I was trying to prove to myself was me.
Wow.
So I quit. It took a month. I finally said, Shayla, if you don't submit my letter of resignation, I will formally do it myself, but I would like to not go around you. And I quit. I had no backup plan. I had no other job lined up. I had talked to no
But
one.
you also had no more ability to keep doing,
No.
like I love that of all the things you went through, of all that stress, of all everything happening to you, you figuring out how to get up time and time again off the ground and battle. You also knew when that wasn't the thing for you anymore. You were like, I beat all these. It's not that I can't beat things. It's that it's not time for that now.
And it was hard because in many ways I walked away from a team that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very fulfilling role. There was a lot that was like, I love my job. And in many ways it was autopilot because I had done it for so long and I knew. But I knew that my kids were getting the probably the worst of me or the hardest of me, and my husband as well. And I'm like, shoot, I'm almost in my 40s. Like what point do I start finding joy again? What part can I start healing? So yeah, we had a few months in savings. And again, my husband was amazing. He was like, you are always an inventor of the next iteration. I have complete faith that if you quit, you will find the right thing. He's like, in fact, I've actually just surprised you waited this long to pull the plug.
I think one thing people should ask themselves sometimes is at what cost? Like I could stay, I could do these things, but at what cost? Like what are the ramifications? And I love that you brought the kids into this because there is a world where you stay there, you end up just going all in on this Everest mission, and your kids wonder where mom is. And even if you can afford, the support you need to be able to manage the kids, it's at what cost?
And the wild thing is, wherever you go, there you are. And so now I've since started my own business. So I do consulting, and a lot of what I was doing on that, at Guild, just on a bigger or a different scale. So I would be lying if I said I didn't still struggle with that. I love working. I have a really high drive to work and produce and create. And so it's still a battle for me to figure out that balance of, my kids are 3 and 6. Like I still have small kids and they very much need me. And so I work wild, crazy hours to try to be, present and with them, but also growing a business and building something. I spent 6 years behind a camera helping people build their brands. Didn't so much as pick up or write a blog. I mean, the irony now, I run into most people and they're like, you're like the best kept secret. How have I never heard of your name? Like, this is what happens when you don't build a personal brand.
Right.
When you do the very thing I say don't do,
Yeah.
like your personal brand actually matters.
I think about that with, we lost a buddy named Busby, and Busby was a writer in Nashville. He wrote a ton of music you've heard, but people haven't heard the name Busby. He was after he passed, he was on the Grammys where they show all the people, the memoriam stuff. But you just think about like so many people are behind, somebody who's out there in front that you're not hearing about. And you've gotten to transition from that person behind and then like, well, maybe you're familiar with my work. Like there's so much you've done, but now for the first time, you've made the change to be, out there and it's working. Like I've seen you on so many things now. You're all of a sudden the big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that has really helped me is I have always been obsessive with people. Like I really care about my relationships. So it's been wild to figure out like, how do you build a personal brand that is very digital heavy, but also relationship based? And how do you, what does change look like? Like, how do you build a business yourself? And I'm a one person show for the most part. And, let's throw in AI. So, all of the changes that come with that has been wild. But I think the biggest change that I've gone through is it's the first time in my life that I actually like who I am. And I feel like, man, I can look back and say I'm so proud. I actually had a client call the other day, and I got off the phone and I called my husband. I said, my Katie 5 years ago would be just jumping up and down, so ecstatic that I just had this phone call. Because
Wow.
5 years ago, I never could have had that conversation. And it's not from a place of arrogance. It's not from a place of pride or accomplishment. It's really from a place of, I've come a long ways. And, I think anytime you have change, again, you can be the victim and you can stay stuck, or you can say, well, Sheryl Sandberg, have you ever heard of her
Yeah, of
book,
course.
Option B?
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, let's kick the shit out of option B, for lack of better words.
Wow.
It's like, okay, would never have obviously chosen infertility or subsequent compounded loss or moving across the country and having to meet new people and reestablish my entire life. And I'll do that while working and navigating early motherhood and not having a support community around me and managing anxiety and loss and job change. It's like, well, let's see what we can do with the cards that I have.
I can tell you, you are so inspiring for me, and I'm sure you're an inspiration for everybody listening right now, because you've been through it all, and I'm sure none of it was easy. And it's not like once you've been through change, it's like now I've mastered change.
No, you are going to make it. You might not feel like it today, but I promise you, you will. You have friends that kind of hold you, like, I'm going to prop you up. Let's go run together or whatever. And then find people also that you can give back into, because giving back also helps give you purpose. And sometimes when you're going through hard, taking the focus off of your hard and in giving into other people is a great way to remind yourself we're all struggling and fumbling our way through change. And if we can remind people you're going to be okay too, and I'm proof and you're proof, it's pretty powerful.
We're going to end it there. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for flying here. It's a benefit to everybody listening to this. This has been super powerful. So appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.